Red Rising. It's a book series that I've been told to read for a long time, and I've always been a little bit hesitant to read it just because of the whole like what people talk about it. They'll talk about it being like Hunger Games in space. And to me, I'm just not a big fan of the Hunger Games, so I've always been hesitant to start this series because I was like, oh, the Hunger Games plus just it being more gritty in space, and it just didn't really sound like something that I really wanted to read, but people kept on recommending it to me, and I've seen a lot of talk of it online, and it was like, okay, I'm somewhat interested in it, but I still wasn't super interested. And I think that eventually people told me at work, even like one of my customers, asked if or told me to, not told me, but suggested reading Red Rising, and I was like, okay, I'll give it a chance. And one of my other friends had a copy of the first book, so I decided to read it, and I am not disappointed. I really enjoyed it, and I'll talk about it just more in this video. But first, what is Red Rising about? So, Red Rising is about the future of humanity as they set out into space to like kind of conquer the solar system, and there's this color hierarchy that gives people different genetic modified traits such as some people are more skilled at technology, some people are more, I guess, designed in a way to like control spaceships. Other people are like technicians, manual labor, a bunch of different stuff like that. And each one's their bodies are different, and they also have different um like genetic traits and stuff and different skills that they're kind of more inherent to. But also they're at the very top of this pyramid is the gold class, which is kind of like I guess you could say the rulers of the society. And basically we follow Darrow, who is a miner at the very bottom of the colors. He's at the very bottom of the social hierarchy. And I don't want to tell too much about the world because it kind of spoils some of the reveals that were very cool and very interesting. So it's better to go into it more blind, I think. But yeah, I think that's a base knowledge of what you should know, I guess, when you're going into it. So, as I said before, I was kind of turned off by the series at just the idea of it being like the Hunger Games. There's so many different dystopian or like young adult series, and I was just kind of like hesitant to start it. But then also, I think when people say like, "Oh, it's more gritty and dark," that doesn't really interest me either. I think that grittiness and darkness in like books and stuff as a theme can be great and it could add a lot to a story, but it could also take a lot away from it, I think, as well, when it's trying to be gritty and dark, just kind of for the sake of being dark and gritty. But I will say that it's not when there is dark parts, and there is some dark parts in it, is that it's not gritty and dark for just being dark and gritty. It's like it has a reason for it, and it has a reason for some of the darker moments. And I think that it doesn't lose the genuineness in it, and it doesn't lose the heart, I guess, of the books. And that's just what I was more concerned about was it kind of losing like a heart, like in a sense, because sometimes I think when things try to be gritty and dark for the sake of it, sometimes they lose like the genuineness of the characters and stuff, and it just isn't interesting or fun. But I think that it does. Pierce Brown does an amazing job of tying it all together and kind of using that like the brutal side, I guess, for good reasons and to really be effective. Um, and yeah, I think the another thing is the world building is really great in these books. I think that Pierce Brown does an amazing job at this, as he kind of slowly and steadily grows the world. And it's kind of a process because for me, I didn't fully grasp, I guess, all the world that he's building until maybe like halfway through the second book. And I think that it's just, especially the first 100 pages of the first Red Rising book, the scope of it is very different, I would say, and you're gonna get like some reveals and stuff, but I won't spoil that. I think just stick through the first 100 pages if you think it's boring, And after you get through the first 100 pages, then if you don't like it, you can. Well, I would actually recommend just reading the whole first book because I think the first book is amazing and the action doesn't really come in until like I would say like maybe 150 pages. But I think that it's definitely worth it getting through the slow part. But also, I think the slow part is really good as well and really sets the foundation for the rest of the series. So I do recommend reading the slow part. Um, so as I mentioned before, the color system. I really like the color system. It's really unique. It's really cool and makes Red Rising stand out just as a book series and just like as a world. I do have to say though, one thing that bugged me a little bit was just that some of the colors are really explored. Like we really get a lot about them. And for some of the other colors, we barely get anything about them. And we barely get any characters who are those colors, or we don't really understand their culture or like who they are and stuff. And it makes sense because some of them aren't necessarily as important as other ones. But I think it would be nice to see those other colors. Such as right here, I have the second book, Golden Sun. And by the way, I've read the first three books, Red Rising, Golden Sun, and Morning Star. Um, and I just started Iron Gold, although I don't know if I'm gonna read it right now, but I've just started like the first 50 pages or so. But right here, this is the color system. You see, we got the triangle there with all the colors. And I think that it's cool. I really like all the colors and everything. I just wish that they kind of had more development for some of them, such as like yellow, for example. Like, yes, there are yellows throughout it, but it would be nice if we knew more about them. And I think especially the higher rank ones like white and copper and silver, they exist, but we don't really get a huge amount about them or many characters who are those colors. And I just think it would be nice if there was a little bit more of that, I guess. Or at least I think one thing I didn't like is it doesn't really explain some of the colors. Like some of the colors, it is very easily to explain. Like there's entire parts about them and stuff. But then for other ones, it's just like you hear that there is a color that is that one, but you don't really get a lot about them. And I feel like sometimes just a quick explanation would be nice. I mean, right there we have like different explanations and stuff. But even still, I feel like with that, without this chart to refer to, the books itself doesn't really give what these colors are just through the story. So I think that's something that I wish was done a little bit differently. But besides that, it's great. I like the colors a lot, and I don't think it really takes away from the story. And talking about the story, I think the story is like really amazing in it. It's very fast paced and intense, and there's a lot of moments for the characters to breathe as well, which is really nice. And it's a nice balance between the two. And something that I love about the books are the way that the characters' relationships build and grow throughout the series. It's believable, it's heartbreaking, it's enjoyable to read, especially some of the friendships. Some of the friendships are some of the best like ever. Like I think that if you read it, you would know what I'm talking about. I think with in Morning Star, like some of the friendships that happen and just some of the moments are so good. Um, and I think that it's just like interesting, especially how like you see the progression of time through the characters' relationships and how that changes them. And also just kind of how like lies and hidden truths and stuff hurt other characters and hurt people in different ways. And I think it's compelling, it's very emotional, especially when you see like where those like storylines lead. And it's just tragic. It's amazing. It's beautiful. And each character, something I like as well, is each side character is very well developed. I think there's only a few that I was like, okay, they're kind of, well, actually, I don't know even. I think that all of the characters are really well developed and you understand their motivations, they're simple and clear and also complex. And I think that all the characters are just so interesting and amazing. And I love the way that Pierce Brown develops all of the side characters and just all of the characters, especially, I mean, the main character, our hero Darrow, is very well developed, but I think that the other characters are also really well done. Um, well, another thing is the writing style, and I want to say the writing style is pretty great. I really like the writing style. Although one thing I have to say, the way that Pierce Brown writes is very fast paced, and I think that what is it called? I forget the term for it. I think it's first person present, something like that. Um, but I'm probably completely wrong. But the way that he writes is very like fast and quick paced. And for me, reading it physically was kind of hard because I guess I'm not used to reading physically, and I'm trying to get back into reading physically and slowing down and enjoying it. I just think that I tend to slow down when I read physically. And I feel like because it was so fast paced, it was hard to slow down with this one. Um, and I think that I listened to the audiobook for Morning Star, and I want to reread it event like in the future, physically. But I just found it easier to listen to them than I did reading it. So maybe if you like audiobooks and reading physically and you're like kind of questioning which one to do, I'd probably suggest read through it first on audio and then go back through, read the rest of it physically if you want to read it again. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you are encouraged to check out these books because I promise you they won't disappoint. I think for me, I would just want to say I think Golden Sun is my favorite, followed by Morning Star, and then Red Rising, the first book. Although the first book is absolutely amazing as well. Yeah, I thought that book was great, and this one just outdid it. And same, well, Morning Star was also really great, but I like Golden Sun a lot. Um, well, I hope you enjoyed this video, and yeah, I hope you read these books, and have a nice day, fellas.